I hope you've had a bit of time to think about some of these questions. So when you square a number, the answer is bigger. So let's just have a think. When I square a number, that means I take the number, this is called the base number, and I multiply it by itself. So, yep, 9 is bigger than the number I started with. 9 is bigger than 3. However, what happens when I square 1? Well, that would be 1 times 1, which is 1. So that is neither bigger nor smaller than what I started with. It's the same. And you can also square, you can square any number. You can square a number less than 1. So let's have a little think about what would happen if I squared a half. So squaring a half would be a half times a half, which is a quarter. So this would give me a number that is smaller than the number I started with. So the answer to sometimes, always, or never for this one is sometimes. Sometimes. Properties of number. If you square a negative number, the answer is positive. So we've already seen what happens when we square a positive number. What happens when we square a negative number? That would be negative 3 times by negative 3. Now, if you know your properties of number, you know when we multiply a negative by a negative, our answer is positive. That goes for all negative numbers. So when you square a negative number, the answer is always positive. So the answer here would be always. Looking at the next two questions. When you add any two negative numbers, the answer is always positive. So let's just see if we can get a positive answer. Let's say negative 1 plus negative 3. So if we think about our number line, if I'm starting at negative 1, adding a negative, well, if I added a positive, that would get bigger, but I'm adding a negative. So I'm actually going to get 3 positions smaller. So negative 1 plus negative 3 would get me to negative 4. In fact, if I start at a negative and I add a negative, this is always going to move me to a smaller position on the number line. So when you add any two negative numbers, the answer is positive. The answer is never for that one. And the last one, when you add a negative and a positive, then the answer is negative. So let's have a look. If I was at positive 3 and I added a negative 2, well, again, thinking of our number line, if I was at 3, adding a negative means I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to get 2 positions smaller. So 3 take away 2 gets me to 1. So that gets me to a positive answer. If I was to look at it with a couple of different numbers, if I had negative 3 plus 1, I'll just put the answer there, negative 3 plus 1. So on my number line, negative 3, if I'm adding 1, I'm going to get 1 bigger. That would take me to negative 2. So that gives me a negative number. So is that sometimes, always, or never? Well, sometimes you can get a negative answer, you can get a positive answer. So the answer for the last one would be sometimes. You might be asked to give examples to justify your answers. So please think through carefully and choose examples that illustrate your point of view.